All right, hello everyone. I hope you are doing well. I've realized my mic is sitting a little low. Let me just take a quick sec and just raise it up real quick. All right, I'm back. I hope you guys have a wonderful or have had a wonderful day. It's been a wonderful Sunday. It's summer now. I know. Seasonally, we're not supposed to have summer until toward the end of June, but it is so warm. But it's Sunday, nevertheless. It's a wonderful day. It's my favorite day of the week for reasons like streaming and also being with my prof at night, watching something like Stargate. But yeah, let me take this banner down and hopefully you can hear me all right. That was an ambient track I developed, I think, like probably a year or so ago. I need to do longer form, like sleep ambient sounds and concentration sounds. I stopped doing that. I don't plan on stopping. I'm going to work on another ambient track sometime this year. I've sort of been working at it steadily. But yeah, Shakti, yeah, I love Shakti. I wanted for my thumbnail, so I have Mace Windu and Yoda. I wanted Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi. I needed a blue lightsaber and a blue background, but I couldn't find it. To be honest, maybe it's just me, but the search engine is it's really hard to find a good Luke blue lightsaber image. I don't know why. So I guess this worked out. So let me get to the comments and see if the camera looks okay. Audio sounds great. Good. Very good. My wonderful prof and channel member. And we've got Star Wars. We've got Yoda back there. And we've got Star Wars. Original characters. I had a piano student. She's like, I don't know. I can't remember how old or who the student was. But she kept looking at my shirt. And she's like, "Who's that?" Pointing to Yoda. I said, "This is Yoda. He's like the one of the most famous characters in Star Wars." And we'll be talking about Yoda for sure today. So there's that. It is May the 4th. I was not planning on talking about Star Wars because it's May the 4th. I understand that May the 4th was maybe possibly not um, the. What was I trying to say? Disney, I don't think started the whole May the 4th, but they certainly incorporated it. They wanted to use it as a marketing ploy. So I actually don't really do anything for May the 4th because it's so it just echoes of Disney and Disney's influence. But I finished two EU novels, a novelization of Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover, who also wrote Shatterpoint, which I really love, and then also Dark Rendezvous by Sean Stewart, I think his name is. And I think Big Al got his copy. I'm so dim. I look very pasty, very cloudy. Oh well. I probably won't worry about it too much. But let's welcome the chat and then talk about Star Wars. Talk about specifically Star Wars heroes, specifically Yoda, since I just finished Dark Rendezvous. I will not be giving spoilers. I'm just giving pinpoints on what makes the book so special. I think it's a 5-star book. I think it's wonderfully written, and it's the perfect story for Yoda, just like with Mace Windu with Shatterpoint. That was the best story written for Mace Windu. I think this was a really good story written for Yoda, even though Yoda's not really the protagonist on the level that Mace Windu is in his story, but he doesn't really need to be because it's him, it's his thoughts, but it's also his actions and his cause. But then it's also people who react to him, whether it's the good guys or the bad guys. And so I think it's very nicely paced, I would say. But before we get into all of that, let's go ahead and see who's in the chat. We've got Eldridge Fan, welcome. We've got Private Eye, thank you for coming. Brian Gilmartin as well. And yeah, this needs to be posted. I want my rose. I want me rose. No. He says, "Give me my rose." Such a good scene. I won't spoil it. Those of you who know Dark Rendezvous would know what scene I'm talking about, and it's a wonderful scene. So we'll talk about themes of Dark Rendezvous, heroism, who Yoda is. I just love who Yoda is as a character. This, just like with Kenobi and his book, and Mace Windu for his book, Palpatine for the book Darth Plagueis, these stories are perfect for the characters whose names are part of the title. So yeah, it's good stuff. We've got John Henry. Good to see you. We've got Ghost Planet honoring his late grandpa's birthday. Yeah, I remember all my grandparents' birthdays. Um, and I'm very blessed. I lost a set of grandparents, but I'm very blessed to have a set of grandparents that are still alive and well, and I need to call them more because there are ways. They're kind of far from where I am, but they're still wonderful. And I remember, I always think every time there's a birthday coming, my late grandmother's birthday is coming up. Um, when December hits, I think about my grandpa whose birthday was in December. I always think about these people, especially during their birthdays. And not speaking of close birthdays, but we do have a birthday boy in May. Big Al presents, "Hello, Star Warriors. May the 4th be with you." Hi, Big Al. Good to see you. Final Fantasy fan. Good to see you too. George Barrett. And let's see. Adega Outlaw. Good to see you. Channel member. Thanks for coming. And I think that's everyone so far. Okay, so Eldritch Fan is asking, did you ever read a review of Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor? If you did, I missed it. No, not yet. In fact, that's the next EU book I'm going to read. And I'm going to read the physical copy. So I'll probably read it late at night. Probably won't get through it as fast as like listening to an Audible book on my walks or the commutes. But that is the next. That might be the only, not the only, but that might be the last EU book I read. Oh, sorry, I just hit Adega Outlaw. Or I didn't, but I forgot to put that off. Or take that down. So Shadows of Mindor is the next EU book that I will read. Maybe it'll be a summer read, I think. And because I want to actually get back into like, there are these short stories and tales by H.G. Wells, and I've been meaning to read more H.G. Wells this year. So I might take a little bit of a break, just a tiny break from the EU, listen to some H.G. Wells stories, and then come back probably as a summer read for Shadows of Mindor. Prof says it's great, so no spoilers, please. No spoilers in the chat. All right. Been a lot of tree pollen in my area, says Brian Gamarn. Yeah, yeah. We had some good rain last night, which was great. I had a car wash, and then I had a nice rain. We had nice rainy weather last night because the pollen has been pretty bad. I used to live in North Carolina, and some parts of North Carolina, maybe all parts of North Carolina, it's a very green state. It's a very beautiful state. There's all these greens, different kinds of greens. But one thing you'll never miss with North Carolina is the pine trees, and boy oh boy, when they pollinate, it's like a dust bowl. It's like a neon green yellow dust bowl, and we don't really have that to that effect up here, but it's kind of the same. Yeah, that's why rain is so beautiful. Thank you, my wonderful prof. Thank you. Star Wars, says Eldritch Fan, is having a renaissance in fan fiction, excellent quality fan films, fan produced, unabridged audiobooks, fan fiction, short stories, novels. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of different with fan fiction. I appreciate fan fiction. I don't need to write fan fiction myself, even if I have good Star Wars stories in my head. No one needs to read Star Wars stories. I've got my own worlds to write. But yeah, I appreciate fan fiction. I do just kind of stick to what's been in the collection of the EU. So there we go. Miss Joseph's Corner is in. Good to see you. And let's see. I think I've got everyone. I think that was everything. Eldritch Fan is also asking if I've reviewed Dark Rendezvous. No, I may do separate videos of it. I'm I've been kind of tossing and turning about, or vacillating, that's the word I was looking for, between doing a review of Revenge of the Sith novelization and not, because I still want my channel to be mainly a music channel, but when I talk about art and stories, it's like it's always important to me. So I don't know. And I know that they just had a recent showing, like a theatrical showing of Revenge of the Sith, and I didn't read Revenge of the Sith, the novelization, because of that either. It just happened to be that happened to be the coincidence. So I mean, there's some things, and we could talk about the novelization, at least my opinions on it, because I have some good opinions, and well, good, at least to me. I also have some strong opinions about it, but I definitely want to talk about Yoda. Now, the Dark Rendezvous, no spoilers. I don't want spoilers. If you guys can, if you've read it, no spoilers in the chat, because I think it's really worth reading. Let me just, I just went through the chat. We'll just go right into it. One thing I really appreciate about some of these Clone Wars or slightly pre-Clone Wars novels, these EU novels, that they are purely Star Wars stories. They're so good. They're very well written, at least the ones that I've been reading. And the thing is, like, with something like Shatterpoint with Mace Windu, he survives his dilemma, his adventure on this planet involving this story, because we see him get taken down in Revenge of the Sith by Emperor Palpatine, obviously. So he survives, but there's still so much at stake, because it's not just lives being at stake. It's your mentation, it's your spiritualization of things. It's your mental abilities, your cognitive abilities, sense of loss, loss that's worse than death. We lose our loved ones to physical death. That's just part of life. But then, the Jedi really do lose a lot more than physical death. They at least, especially with, Mace's story, he loses a beloved Padawan over to the dark side of the Force, and he's grieved by it, because he's basically her surrogate father. And it's really sad. No spoilers, of course, for that, if we can. Same thing with Yoda. We know Yoda survives this story, Dark Rendezvous. We know the premise is Count Dooku is wanting to make a negotiation. He wants to make a truce, maybe with the intention of coming back to the Jedi Order. And Yoda, this grandfatherly father figure, you do get a very strong impression with the narrative of this story, Dark Rendezvous. The reader has a strong understanding that Dooku was probably a favorite of Yoda's. Like, Yoda loves this individual, and he's harder with him. He's harder with Dooku than with the other younglings with like the different tournaments and the different games that Yoda plays. So we know that that Dooku does not come back. We know what happens to Dooku based on the Revenge of the Sith story. We know that Yoda survives because obviously he teaches Luke Skywalker on Dagobah. So as far as lives being at stake, like the personal protagonist, we know they survive, but it's how they come out, how they come out changed, or what they can give to the reader or to the characters around Yoda. So I actually want to maybe just make a quick comparison, between Mace Windu and Yoda. Like, Mace Windu with his story with Shatterpoint, he's still the same dogged Jedi Knight, Jedi Master. He's still the same Mace Windu who goes in and comes out of his story, but with new perspective. With Yoda, he's not really coming out of his story with new perspective. One, he's just so old. He's lived a very, very long life of 800 plus years. It's not so much new perspective. It's him needing to he's learned to relive the same pain of loss over and over and over again, whether it's loss of actual life or loss of those he loves who have turned to the dark side, who have decided to serve the Sith, in the case with Count Dooku. And, in the movie version, especially when he's talking with Anakin, he talks about, Anakin's, he's feeling very afraid of losing, obviously, his wife. And of course, he doesn't confide in Yoda, obviously. He doesn't want to confide in anyone, including Obi-Wan, of his romantic relationships and his marriage. You know, he's secretly married. I can't imagine being secretly married. That's crazy to think about. But he can't confide his very specific reason. Anakin cannot confide in Yoda his very specific reason of who is um, the subject of his premonitions. And Yoda in the film says, you need to learn to let go of everything you fear to lose. And it's very easy for the viewer of that movie to get the sense that Yoda being so at peace with the Force and so serene and just so good, and he's that grandfatherly, he's got that disposition, that personality, that grandfatherly nature. It's very easy for people to see, well, he has no attachments. He has no uh, relationships. He has no dark side. He has no weakness, maybe because he's lived so long. But with the novel Dark Rendezvous, Yoda Dark Rendezvous, the opposite is true. He has very strong affections for young children, like a grandfatherly teacher, so younglings in the Jedi Temple. And he has this not unhealthy, but a very strong attachment and devotion to recovering the Count Dooku. He wants to bring Dooku back. He really does in this book love this man like a son. Now, in human being years, you know, in the span of the human life, Dooku is now quite old. I don't know what like exactly his age, but he's like 70, 80. You know, he's old. And we'll talk about age. We'll talk about the themes of Yoda Dark Rendezvous without getting into the spoilers. But going back to Yoda and his experience, one of the conflicts in the story is how people, like good guys and bad guys, how they react negatively to Yoda because he's so serene in the Force. And they question him. They even disrespect him. Like we just lost these two wonderful Jedi masters, these people that were so close to me, close to me. And how can you just eat a dinner, you know? Like how can you not grieve? Meaning that the person accusing him is like, well, you're bereft of all emotion. You don't care. You don't care that they died. And Yoda basically, because he can say it, he can throw out the age card and say and deal it out, saying, I have experienced over 800 years of loss. You know, like countless as the stars have I seen the loss of Jedi lives. And he is not, well, with Count Dooku it's a little different, but he is always that light. You know, people are saying, why don't you rage? Why don't you grieve? Now, with grieving, he does. There's this wonderful scene where Yoda and two Padawans, 13 and 14 years old, they're grieving over their masters and what they were succumbed to, and they all share a meal. And, you know, the boy who's accusing Yoda, he finally relents. He needs his time to cry. He needs his. There's a little. So that's kind of a spoiler, but it's important to talk about. This boy, this young Padawan, who up until this point in the Jedi Temple, he's the good boy. He's the serene boy. He's like wise beyond his years until he starts second guessing himself, and he's like, oh my gosh, I do have dark side tendencies. Oh, I can. And so he's raging against this older mentor. He relents. He needs his time to cry. And there's this scene where the girl Padawan and Yoda share a meal while the boy cries. And then the boy and Yoda shares a meal and the girl cries. And then Yoda at one point in the meal, and it's only in a paragraph. It's not. It's only in a few sentences, but you can kind of see this like triangulation of, you know, rotating around. I'm crying, now I'm eating, and getting the sustenance I need for the rest of the mission. And then Yoda, he eats first, then he cries, and then he tells all these stories of the fallen Jedi, of the story of Dark Rendezvous. So it's honoring the dead. Meal sharing is very, very important. Communion is very important. That's symbolic of actual religious meals, celebration meals, meals honoring the dead. The thing of just that communal experience of eating, but also grieving. Learning to live. There's this great line where Dooku says, "I've learned to kill," and he's going at one point he's going after Yoda for probably the last time, and then Yoda responds, "Who is more powerful than Dooku?" He says, "I've." So Dooku says, "I've learned to kill," meaning he's really great at killing. Yoda says, "I've learned to live," which means survive. Also live in his experience, but he's serene. Yoda doesn't really have a character arc. He's really the impetus that guides the different people. The Padawan's trying to stay good. Count Dooku, who's definitely chosen to serve his master Darth Sidious, and it's really wonderful. And a couple things with symbolism. The main point of Yoda's existence, a couple main points, is he when he's attacked and accused, even by well-meaning people, well-meaning characters, when he's attacked by thinking, how can this not bother you? How can death and collateral damage, how could all this war not bother you? He said, of course it bothers me. If you look into the blackness of space, there are little points of starlight, but the space is not mostly stars and little space, little void. It's the opposite. It's a little pinprick by points of light, and he says, "I will always remain in the light." The world is not safe. The universe, the galaxy is not safe. The galaxy is so corrupt, it's so evil, but that does not change me. I need to remain the light. He says it in so many words. And his starlight, there's a little bit of a symbolism there with the star blinking in the blackness of space, but also he's also another symbol with his relation. So he's the star to the Padawans, but with his relationship to Dooku, he's a candle. He's a simple wax candle, and he needs to keep burning, burning with good passion, always shedding the light. And Dooku tries. Dooku is always fine in his Sith powers. Always fine with his negotiating and causing war. But when it comes to Yoda, his old master, his father figure, there are things that happen with him. You can almost see him want to turn back to the light side when it comes to Yoda. There are two things. He has a shaking hand, so he's old, but he's very he's a count. He's very aristocratic. He's very stoic. He's very still. You can see obviously Christopher Lee's mannerisms. He's very still, but when it comes to his old master, not even Sidious. When it comes to his old master Yoda, he has a shaking hand. His hand intermittently trembles, just out of control. He's it's such a nuisance to him. He thinks he's fine with all his power and his tendencies until he has that shaking hand. And then when he's given a candle, when a candle is sent his way, he understands that his master's coming. Now he's planning to trap him, but his master's coming to hope to bring him back, see if he could pull away from Darth Sidious's influence, and then Yoda and Dooku can take on the Emperor together or something. That's hopefully Yoda's plan. Also, just the mere mention of a truce is also a good thing for Yoda to try to attain, because if there continues to be a war, then millions, if not billions of lives are always at stake, always lost, So Yoda also not just comes for personal reasons to try to win his surrogate son back, but he also thinks, well, if he is meaning to have a truce, then this will save lives. So he kind of goes into this undercover mission. So the shaking hand was one thing. What was the other? Oh, and the other thing with the Count is he's always poised. He always knows what to do. He has control over everyone under him, including the deadly Asajj Ventress. He has complete control. He's in this manor filled with poisonous moss and acidic rain and stuff, and he has complete control of the situation until he meets his old master Yoda face to face, and he's always thrown off balance. And this mirrors his experience as a Padawan, where he tries to always have the upper hand. He finds it to be, he has this kind, he always remembers his old master with some level of contempt, because Yoda lets the Padawans, as like a grandfatherly, you know how a good grandfather, lets the kid win. Like, oh, you beat me in this game. And Yoda's the same with the Padawans, except with Dooku, because Dooku is very, very clever in the Force and very powerful in the Force, and Yoda never lets him win. Never lets him win. And it's mirrored in the final showdown with them in a pretty powerful way. I kind of don't want to spoil it, but it's, basically Yoda is too powerful. Yoda can strike the Count down. And the Count has one final last resort. He launches a missile that is directing to the manor, so everyone, of course, fighting in the manor will be killed. And without revealing what happens at the very, very end, Dooku places him in the dilemma, like, you have the power to kill me, but what's more important, you saving your friends or you killing me? And of course, Yoda's gonna obviously save his friends and all the Jedi Padawans. At one point, Anakin Skywalker and Kenobi are there. So this whole time in this book, Yoda is always the light, and you got to read it for yourself. But there's one point where Dooku, in his dialogue, a beautiful philosophical dialogue in that scene in the manor between Yoda and the Count. They don't go at it fighting, not until the very end. It's a very beautiful scene with them just talking. It's awesome. And so the Count is always thrown off balance. And the one thing that can make that balance level out, or the equilibrium just be centered again, is the Count wants Yoda to rage at all the loss of life, including the loss of pretty much the Count's soul to the dark side. Why don't you rage? And there's a moment where Yoda, the ever-present teacher, no matter who listens and who doesn't, he's always a teacher. He kind of has a Superman versus the Elite moment, a very small one, not as extreme as what happens with Superman and the Elite, but he has a teachable moment to the Count. What if Yoda did fall to the dark side? And there's this understanding that pretty much the galaxy would be wiped out, because Yoda, with his experience with the Force, he's an uber powerful being. First of all, he doesn't, the Count tempts him like, well, the dark side could get you whatever you want, power. And Yoda's like, I have enough power. I don't need any more wealth. Friends you can use and abuse. And Yoda's like, I don't need any of this. Teach me what the dark... He's like, he switched his roles. Maybe I am spoiling it, but he's like, teach me, Dooku. Teach me what the dark side can give me. And there's one moment where Dooku basically begs him to rage at all loss of life. And Yoda, being the teacher, shows him what it could be, what it could mean for Yoda to be a dark side Force user. And it would not be pretty. It would be utterly destructive. And it would be the death of Darth Sidious, for one. Because Yoda is, if he yields himself, surrenders himself to the full power of the dark side, he could wipe out Sidious because he's so powerful. And I believe it. I believe Yoda could be that powerful, but he is meek and kind-hearted. He has power in the Force, but he subdues any dark side tendencies for the good of the Force, you know, for obviously bearing the light. He doesn't want any part of the dark. And he you know, in so many words, he's not convinced, you know, he's not convinced that he would ever want to be dark. I love though that kind of like with Superman versus the Elite. I love that even Dooku, who has this contempt and disgust of his old master, like, why can't you be a dark force user? He would see the dilemma. He would see, oh, this is not a good idea for the galaxy. That he kind of like with Superman, like he has all the power, like all the power he needs, but he doesn't give in to the dark side tendencies. And there's a theme too with this story that is everybody has dark force tendencies. Everyone has that weakness, but you have to master that weakness. And you have to be perpetually good. You have to be continually practicing virtue. And so that's what Yoda, a character like Yoda, represents. He is the force for good, and he has mastery over his own weaknesses. He's had 800 plus years of experiencing the worst kinds of things. Like he tells Dooku's, like, I've seen things and I've experienced things you can't possibly dream of. And I believe it. I believe it as a reader who, you know, this Jedi master, you know, obviously he's a master for a reason. And the other two themes in the story is really wonderful. It's the theme of home and it's the theme of age. So you have three tiers of three tiers. Let's talk about age first. You have three tiers. You've got the Padawans, the very young ones. Like they're coming of age. They're they're not young kids. They're becoming teenagers. And you go through their different conflicts, the boy and the girl, you go through their conflicts. Then you have the Jedi Knights, Max Liam. Well, no, she's a master. She's older too. She's kind of like a grandfather or grandmother. She's like a, um, if not a grandmother, like a surrogate mother. And then you have Jay Merrick or Marek. And they're like the parent tier. They could be young adult. I don't think Max Liam, she's much older, I think. She gives me that impression because she's kind of like that cow alien, so she kind of has she's like a slow, like she chews the cud, so to speak, you know. Very slow going, but she's a lethal force user when she has to be. But she's also good. She's good-natured, good-hearted. And so you have well, you've got the Padawans, then you've got Skywalker, because he's still kind of young. Then you got Kenobi, Jay Merrick, Max Liam, more or less with Dooku. You have Asajj Ventress, who's kind of probably Kenobi's age, maybe younger. She's hot-headed, she's very impulsive, just like with Skywalker. And then you have the old mentor. With Dooku, it's the theme of age, the theme of living and existing at an old age is very interesting because he while he appreciates Asajj Ventress, while he he kind of puts her on the same level as Skywalker, who's impulsive because he looks down on the youth, even the older youth like Skywalker and Ventress, because they're hot-headed, they're very impulsive. Maybe they're very attuned with the Force, and maybe they're very, very lethal when they have to be. But he's like, oh, I'm beyond that. I'm beyond their years. I'm stoic. I have control of the situation, and he mentally plays that card every single time when he's dealing with younger people or even an old mistress of the manor who's gone mad. He asserts his command over people because of his age. He sees his age as an advantage. Yes, he has the trembling hand. Yes, he understands he's not in his prime. He even understands that Sidious may want to do away with him because of his age. He starts understanding that as the book progresses. And Ventress is, you know, she's pretty much threatened to, like, he could cut her down. He's very cold with her. Dooku is, but she kind of goads him, thinking, you know, Your master will do away with you because you're old. That's what she says effectively. And he takes that to heart. He sort of understands as it goes along, the progression goes along, he understands his impending doom with serving Darth Sidious because he can understand that possibility of Sidious taking on another master. Now, because he's been away from Anakin Skywalker and away from the Jedi, he's not suspecting. Obviously, it's going to be Anakin Skywalker eventually. But he kind of, her words, Ventress's words, are getting to him. It's getting into his psyche that it's like, okay, I think I might be used up, even though he still thinks, because of experience, I have commanded the situation, except with his master, Darth Sidious, but also with his master Yoda. Why? Because Yoda's lived at least 8 times the lifespan of Count Dooku, and so he doesn't have the upper hand. He doesn't have his age when it comes to Yoda. And Yoda with Dooku and with the Padawans, the teenagers, Yoda's like, you guys can't tell me I don't know how to grieve, or I haven't experienced loss. I've experienced way more than you. He plays the age card. It's great. I love it. And then you have the theme of home. What is Coruscant? What is this wicked manor on this wicked acidic planet? What does that mean? That is actually someone that is a character's family home. But then you start seeing it. Home is not Coruscant. Home is not even the Jedi Temple. It could be, but home is people, because there's this. You can call it a fault. We can get into that topic another time. But it's when taking children so young who are force sensitive to be trained in the Jedi Temple, you could see that as a problem. Dooku absolutely sees that as a problem, even though he had a very strict, very uptight, aristocratic upbringing. Like he's the Dooku's, they or the people of Sereno, they fend for themselves. They don't need help. He injures himself, I think, in a garden, and he can't tell his mother because the mother would just say, get over it. You need to learn to buck up and fend for yourself. And then he was taken by the Jedi, who, of course, Yoda starts developing this wonderful bond with Dooku. Dooku never saw, at least not in this book, he never saw Sereno as his home, his home planet. When he was very young, right before his first mission, he saw the Jedi Temple as his home. But then, as years go by, and as he breaks away from the Jedi religion and what he thinks is a really horrible ideology, his conflict is Yoda has been his home, and he's trying to pull away from that. Yoda is the face of home, no matter what planet they're on. It's not Coruscant, it's not the Jedi Temple, it's not Sereno, it's not any of his places of affiliation. It's people. And he does not see home, obviously, in Darth Sidious. He fights it. He fights it to the very end. That feeling of home in Yoda. The Padawans later say, "Oh, we see home in your teachings," different things like that. And so home is not a place; it's a person, or it's what the person fights for. That's home. And I've actually, it kind of spoke to me a little bit because I've always been kind of a vagabond in my young adult life. I mean, I lived in Washington, I think, until 25, and I moved in different apartments and different house sharing situations. But I lived in 7 states, I think. Effectively, I've driven around. I've never left the country, so I don't know to that extent. So America, like if I see an American flag, it's like, oh yeah. State, I've said this before. When you go across the states, every state smells different. You get out of the car, get something from the gas station. Wyoming smells different from Utah, smells different from Montana, smells different from Washington, smells different from Virginia, smells different from Texas. But I've always moved around. Now that I'm married, I'm completely home, but home, yes, while I love the state that I live in, it's the person, home is with my husband. And I love that idea that home is with is with the people. Yes, it could be the house, it could be the state, it could be the community you love, but it is really more because the community. It's not so much the actual area you live in. And so Dooku struggles with that. He really wrestles with that. And I do like the idea that Yoda is that anchor. He's that light, and he's that anchor. He is he is home to so many people. He's home to the younglings. And he's also it's mentioned in this story that he hardly leaves the temple. So when he does leave the temple, there's the part in the story, it's in the middle of the book, where uh, Coruscant believes Yoda is dead, and the morale just drops with the war. Like it's already high stakes, like the war is getting really, really intense at this point of the Clone Wars, and Coruscant is facing a huge dip in morale because there something happens where it's believed, Yoda's going off on this supposed mission in secret. He's doing something else. He's secretly rendezvousing with to meet the Count, so no one can know. Only the Jedi. Not even. I think only Mace knows until he needs to contact Anakin and Kenobi, but no one else on the council knows. Like this is super super secret. And so when it's seen as like this impersonator, this really funny actor who impersonates Yoda, because he's been in like 491 Jedi plays where he plays the character of Yoda because he's a dwarf or a little person, however you want to say it. When something happens to him, he does survive, but the public believes the real Yoda is dead. And so people see Yoda as a place to center themselves. They see him. So any death of his, supposedly, any change of him turning to the dark side, is catastrophic to those he knows the closest, has closest relationships with him, including Count Dooku. But also he is the public face. He is the serenity. He is aged and tranquil and well spoken for good reason, because he just knows more based on his own life experience. He knows more, not just with the Force, but he just knows more, and people look to that. And it's important to also look to. It's a good thing now that I think about it. It's important to see your elders, that way. Like no matter if you have disagreements with them, or maybe not think they have the right idea as far as religion or politics or whatever. It's like they've lived longer. Like if I should grace the world at age 90, I'm like, yeah, okay, I've lived some time. And so having that respect as well. So I feel like I'm missing something else, but Yoda Dark Rendezvous is it's Yoda's story. He's not as much, you're not so much in his perspective as with other protagonists in their stories, but it's a perfectly written story about Yoda, who Yoda is, why it's good that he is who he is, why he knows how to live with loss, and why he doesn't succumb to rage and succumb to grief. Because we see that with the more impulsive Jedi Knights, namely Anakin Skywalker. And what does that do? Well, that turns Skywalker into Darth Vader. So it's all super important. So let's get into the chat, and then we'll talk amongst yourselves. Or I'll talk with you because you've been talking amongst yourselves. One second. Gotta grab some water. And I'm here. See that beautiful picture of Shakti. I love Shakti. She does make an appearance in the novelization. And she is leagues better than Ahsoka Tano. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Eldritch Fan is recommending finest of fan fiction I've read in years, Broken Alliance by author who goes by Nerali. It's incredible. Yeah. That's cool. I just don't read fan fiction. It's just not, it's just me. Like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with fan fiction. It's because I see YouTubers do this a lot. Like they'll whether it's like with Marvel movies or recent comics, they'll do the hypothetical. And it's a good brain activity. It's a good brainstorming thing. Like, oh, what would DC characters be like if this happened? Or, how would the Marvel movies, what would take place if this happened? And it's like, I personally don't prefer doing that myself if I don't have the license to do it, you know? Um, it's just me. It's just a preference. Ghost Planet says, I celebrate Star Wars Day to celebrate the original EU. Uh, you do not care for the Disney stuff. Neither do I. Um, I guess there's if you know Matt Wilkins, he's into EU and all that, and he'll talk to people who are pretty much all over the spectrum as far as the where their allegiance lies. So some people like Disney, some people don't. And they were talking about the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, and um, I don't think I would need a deluxe version, even with additional annotations that's provided to us by the author, because if it goes into Disney's pocket, I'm not interested in supporting it. Yeah. My hair is very greasy today. I need to get a haircut. It's just so ugh. Um all right. So Eldridge Fan is also recommending another book by Sean Stewart, Resurrection Man. He seems to excel in quirky family dynamics. Yeah, family is a very good theme in Yoda Dark Rendezvous. It's great. It just ties in so well. Um, and let's see. Brian says Yoda be like forgotten, be like, quote, forgotten. I have more than learned you have, or something like that. Yeah, he just knows more. He's seen more. And I think it can be very easy for especially younger people to be very upset with older people just not getting angry enough. It's like they take things in differently. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Eldritch Fan makes the point, a strong point, Sean Stewart's strong point of family dynamics. I think family dynamics are really important. You've got that with Stargate, you've got that with Agents of Shield. You do have that a little bit with the Star Wars originals, uh, give or take the circumstances. Yeah, and you can now see where Anakin fell because he was being so secret with his family dynamics. I mean, he's yeah, novelization. As far as the writing, there's a lot of good stuff. Stuff I don't really care for with the novelization, but um, there yeah, good stuff. One second, I'm still here. I'm gonna read. Oh, let's see. Jared is in. Hey, man, good to see you. Seeing Revenge of the Sith on the big screen again was great, and then knowing how great it did in the box office made me very happy. Yeah, people, you know, on that, people, they do say like one second, they do say, they say like, oh, the theater is dead. It's like, well, it's only dead if you're showing stuff people are interested in. Because obviously there's a huge interest in Revenge of the Sith. There's a huge interest in like, didn't Return of the King have a 20th showing, a 20th anniversary showing a few years back? I mean, people really are interested. A lot of people love Revenge of the Sith as their favorite. And it's still like it has aged so well. It looks beautiful. And I didn't see the showing. In fact, I haven't seen Revenge of the Sith in many years now. Um, but it's so aesthetically Star Wars. It's very distinct. And I'm sorry, like I saw we don't have to talk about recent films, but just to the extent with visuals and how things look and how worlds look. I've seen posters shots and still shots of some movie like Thunderbolts, and I only know that that's out because I watch people like RJ from the Fourth Age. I watch his weekend videos, so he was showing those images while he was doing his video essay. And I love the color gray. I love the color silver. It is just too gray. Like all the shots, except maybe one that was kind of in this red furnace room or whatever, all the shots are gray. The poster shots look so horrible. Like none of those characters look like anyone I want to be friends with. And you contrast that with something like as beautiful as Revenge of the Sith. It's so stunning. It's I will, I feel like this should be like a two-parter, me talking about Star Wars, because I actually do want to talk about the optimism in Star Wars, um, versus what we see now. Not so much with shows or stories, but just with how things look and how things feel. Because, one reason why I can't get into watching new films is the color grade, the color grade, the scope of things, everything just looks so fake. And even in a fantasy world, like it just doesn't look right. It just like it's supposed to look hyperbolic like that. And, like it just doesn't look right. Everything looks so much the same. Like the new science fiction movies, they all look the same. Like Matrix had it obviously, had it done well. But just even recent science fiction films, I'm like, it all looks the same. It all looks like it's produced either by like Christopher Nolan or, I mean, even Dune. People are like, oh my gosh, Dune was amazing, visuals was amazing. I'm like, it's so much better in my imagination. I'm not a filmmaker, so I don't know what goes into making a really good looking film, obviously. But I just let me have my own imagination because I feel like I can dream it up so much better. Um, but on going back to the showing of the Revenge of the Sith, people came in droves because it's a very special movie. It's special because a lot of younger people watched it when they were kids, so they want to take their kids to seeing it. And even though it's a tragic tale, it's a cautionary tale, it's the tragic hero with Anakin Skywalker, it still resonates with people. Like it does. For whatever lacks, I would say there are a lot of things lacking in the writing of that film that is beautifully cushioned, not cushioned, but like beautifully spelled out in the novelization. It's still a good film, it's still a good movie. It captures people, and that's what movies should do. There is this argument where people are like, "Ah, it's got to be entertaining." It's like, yes, it's got to be entertaining, but it doesn't stop there. It has to capture you. It has to teach you. It has to send you. It has to like take hold and say, "Oh my gosh, this really resonates with me." Like people say, "No, you shouldn't write art. Or you shouldn't write stories and make art that teaches people." That's preaching and that's being um, ideological and stuff. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like Yoda, Dark Rendezvous taught me a lot, and I love it. I love being um, uh, guided, like that is a perfect story that guided me to a better understanding of something. Same with Shatterpoint. Like Shatterpoint really guided me on how people deal with always being placed against all odds and in warfare in particular, and the dark tendencies you do have, and you have mastery over that even though you want to give in to your dark tendencies. I mean, so like all these books that I've been reading just tell me something. It's not just entertaining. Yeah, it's entertaining, but it's like, yeah, more, more, more. No, I was like, no, I want to think deeply on these things. And I think even the film Revenge of the Sith really, I'm sure you would just walk out like, it's really like when Anakin is raised on the platform when he's in his suit Darth Vader, and he's got a horrible evil journey ahead of him obviously, and you hear the choir in the background. It's like, because it happens, like Anakin becomes Darth Vader, and it's still tragic. Padme's gonna die, and it's still tragic. Like I knew with the novelization, You know everything happens if you've seen the film, but Padme's death in the book and in the on the film too, or in the film, it's still heartbreaking. Like when she gives birth and when I think it's the droid or when Obi-Wan says it's a boy and she breathes out Luke, I'm like, oh, I teared up. I just like, it's so heartbreaking. Oh, and it's good. It's good. Hello, Amy L. Good to see you. Hello, Crystal Ashes. Ahoy. Sorry I'm late. Nah, better late than never. Always good to see you. And I keep forgetting to put your comment up since you are a member. Thank you. Um, Ghost Planet says Ahsoka is Sound Engraver's arch nemesis. Her Newman to her Jerry Seinfeld. That's funny. Her sideshow Bob to her Bart Simpson. That's hilarious. Yeah, you know the thing is though, Ahsoka is beautifully becoming more and more irrelevant. I didn't think so 3 years ago. I thought she was going to take over Luke Skywalker. At first, I thought she was going to take over Rey, or maybe Luke Skywalker first and then Rey. She didn't. And you know what did that to her? Poor writing. Too much of her. Man, that writing, it was like dying on your own sword. Ahsoka is not relevant anymore, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I thought I was the only person or one of few people always talking about it on YouTube for some time. It was like 4 years ago where I was just constantly talking about it, talking about her character, um, because I thought she was going to take over the universe. She didn't, and that's thanks to Dave Filoni and his horrible writing tendencies. Like his writing finally nailed the coffin. I think it was with the live action show. I think if they did not make her a live action character, I think she would still have her clutches on everything. But because for whatever reason it did not work with her making a live action character, and the horrible writing that I never saw the live action show. The last thing I ever saw of Disney was that final 7 season of Clone Wars, and I ranted about it for some time, and then I never looked back, except just kind of laughing at the news that like things were just going wrong with the writing with her live action. I'm like, yeah. And then Kenobi, like, why did people watch Kenobi? Like, why like all these people who try to like say we gotta like make sure Andor gets celebrated because it's well written, and I'm like, I'm just not Disney. Like, no, you gotta celebrate the good, and I'm like, and there's controversy involving Andor. Like, is it good? Is it not good? Is it too slow? Is there? It's just, it's a mess, and I'm not a part of it. I just these characters, the images you see on the Star Wars shirt, all original characters. Not even prequel characters, they're just all original characters. Yeah, Crystal Ashes says new films are tanking uh, in theaters, so they have to rely on good old classics to bail them out. And they're, I think RJ from the Fourth Age, he made a really good point. It's a wonderful distinction of being of going by the formula and being formulaic. He made the distinction that yes, there is a formula to things. As I've said again and again, there's a formula to good music composition. There's a formula to good storytelling and good writing. Being formulaic is different. Being formulaic is trying to capture what has been so popular, not knowing why it's popular, and trying to retell it in your own way, and it just doesn't work. It looks fake, it looks like poor imitation, and it's never been good since. And people just need to understand what, and yeah, there might be. I think I do want to talk about Star Wars in particular because Star Wars, why it took the world by storm. There's something to it, and I don't want to go into the details because I first of all I know a very specific thing, but I need to like do a little bit of research. But effectively, Star Wars was science fiction that took the world by storm because it was optimism. I love science fiction. I love it. I love it. And I do want to see, I still haven't seen, I will see it. I promise. I still want to see films like, movies like Logan's Run. I've seen images, I've seen pictures. I saw the trailer, which looks great. And I appreciate that. But, you know, things like Logan's Run came out of like the 60s and the 70s that were you were coming out of World War II, and then you were flung into things like um, Vietnam and liberty for everyone, and all this stuff that really messed with the psyche of society, and people became with addition to critical theory and postmodernism, society became deeply, deeply cynical. And I think the reason why Star Wars just took the world by storm was because it was science fiction, the aesthetics of science fiction. People say, it's space fantasy. It is fantasy, but it's also science fiction because science fiction can be fantasy too. But you got the aesthetics of sci-fi. You got the spaceships, the orbiting planets, the space fighters and all that. So you had the aesthetics of science fiction with the mythical, with the mythological, with the mystical, the religious, supernatural, spiritual element, and it was optimistic. Yeah, bad things happen to good guys, bad things happen to innocent people, but there was always optimism. There was always hope. Star Wars just it was just completely optimistic. And as much as I love science fiction, there's more science fiction out there that is, yes, it's deep, it's it gets you, it can provoke you emotionally, but there's a lot of despair. I mean, there's just one sci-fi classic. What is it called? Flowers from Algernon or something. And it's a sci-fi classic I'm kind of scared to read, but I still want to read. And it's basically, and I saw the movie, like it was called Charlie or something. If you guys know what I'm talking about, it's an older film. I think it's a short film, I can't remember, but I saw it like in 7th or 8th grade. And it's this, back in the time of the making of the film, the time of the writing of the story, you would use words like mentally retarded. And the protagonist, or at least the main character, is this mentally retarded man who gets tested on and he becomes like super intelligent. But at least in the film, I don't know about the book, he starts understanding he's going to regress back to his mental retardation. And that's got to be horribly emotional. It must be so 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 scary. And we suffer with similar things in the real world, like Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. I mean, real like dementia. I mean, we face this constantly with close friends or relatives or people who are deeply impacted by this. And I don't expect that not tale, but that novel to be a happy feeling one. But it's a classic. It's a sci-fi classic. It deals with, it deals with the ethics of experimenting on human beings, maybe on mice, whatever the case is. And there's so much classic sci-fi just like that. Even Dune, even something that is considered a very famous epic, has a lot of darkness. Paul Atreides is not laid out to be the hero. He's laid out to be an icon to be worshipped by religious extremists. It's very dark. It's very grim. It's not grim dark like the genre is concerned with, or like we know the genre should be. But it's deeply. I wouldn't say Dune is cynical, but it's heavy. It's heavier than Star Wars could ever be. Even though Star Wars deals with very heavy things, it's even the horror that we can see with EU novels or things like Darth Bane or something like that. Even if very scary, like with the comics with Exar Kun or whatever, there's still always that hope to bring people back to the light. You don't really get that with Dune. You I wish Asimov did it a little bit with his own writing with Foundation Trilogy. There was a tiny bit. The Foundation Trilogy is lighter in tone than Dune is, even though it's also a catastrophic epic, or at least it can be. sequels and prequels are not good, but the Foundation trilogy is good. But anyway, science fiction, going back all the way to Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, was always it always lays out the deprivation of man, or at least the potential deprivation of man. Now, I think that's very important with science fiction, but with me, I want that element, yes, but I need hope. I need absolute the fundamental chance of hope being intact. That's why Lord of the Rings is so popular. It needs to be that way with science fiction. That's why I think Star Wars, when it entered the scene in the 1970s, like the late 1970s, after art had been undergoing decades of cynicism and the antithesis of what is beautiful, people lapped it up. They're like, this is amazing, and that's why Star Wars is so special. So something like Return of the or Revenge of the Sith, even though it's a cautionary tale involving a tragic hero, people know it's meant to be something. It's meant to, get you centered and understand what it means to be a hero, even a tragic hero, like Anakin. Thank you so much, Crystal Ashes, for gifting 5 memberships. I do appreciate that. Everyone gets a planet because I love sci-fi. You get a badge, and depending on where you are in the length of time you have been a member, you get a planet. If you start becoming a member, you get a beautiful picture of Earth. I made it nice and pretty and shiny and saturated it a little bit. It's a beautiful picture of Earth. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Has my head been cropped up this whole time? Or cropped out? That might be a little bit better. I don't know. That looks better now. Yeah. All right. Uh, this is just, oh, wait, what are you guys talking about? Let's see. Yeah, I think Eldridge fan makes a really good import, really important point about a good art piece, or great storytelling. You say you can go back and reread it or rewatch it later at different stages of life and get more out of it. I think that's the fundamental theme of how I try to make art or stories, with music in particular, is that I want to compose music that you can always go back to. E- Whether you're passive about it or love it, I mean, the experience is yours. It's the same way with telling a story. Like, I'm writing short stories right now. I'd like to publish another one this month. It's a tale that involves, not tale. It's not really a tale, but it involves a frontiersman, a young man with a young protege. Um, why are they exploring the area they're exploring? There's a sense of optimism, but also a huge sense of loss of what these two individuals have gone through. But there's always hope, and both the boy and his mentor, who's 20 years old, they have a very good, especially as the mentor teaches the boy. The boy can be a little bit rambunctious or a little impulsive, but he, through the mentor, understands what is important, what their community needs, because they're put in a position where they live where they live because of impossible odds. And it's not really, the impossible odds are not really explored. I'm trying to make connecting stories like, oh, I see the big picture now. Oh, okay, this is why they're here. So I centered it on the young man and the boy prodigy, or protege. But where was I going with that? There's sadness, there's loss, there's even genocide at one point insinuated, because it's part of this tragic history involving this group of people. Uh, the main character, through his perspective, you see that he's a very well-rounded person. Even for his young years, he's 20 years old, and the boy is 10. But he just understands things, and he really acts as an intermediary between different relationships. And it's a short story. Well, it's like, okay, it's like 5,700 words, but it's, it needs, my science fiction needs to be epic and it can be tragic, but there needs to be hope. And I think science fiction, it grieves me because I love science fiction so much, but there is a lot of cynicism in 20th century science fiction. There's a lot of generic science fiction of the 21st century. I think people like latch on to Star Wars and like, I gotta make it look like this. It's like that's the problem that a lot of fantasy has suffered is like, I gotta make it look like Lord of the Rings. It's like, don't make Lord of the Rings because Tolkien understood the fairy world and the fairy mythos. Like he understood tales, he understood the fairy, the fairy things like the fairy queen. He's also deeply religious. You know, Tolkien is deeply religious. It's like that's what made Middle Earth is his understanding of myth, the fairy, and the fae, and also his Catholic religion. So you don't need to look like Lord of the Rings. And like if you're developing fantasy, be inspired by Lord of the Rings, be inspired by Star Wars, but not everything needs to have the same aesthetic. I used to think I'm going to go off on a little rant, and then I'll get back to the chat. I used to think, oh yeah, my story, my long fiction is a space opera. And the more I looked into space opera, I'm like, oh, this is not space opera. My stories are not space opera. It's a space epic. It's a sci-fi epic. It's got hope. It's got tragedy. It's got loss. It's got goodness. It's got all sorts of things. And it's got good guys and it's got bad guys. So, I mean, if you want to call it space opera for that, but it's not. I think the one thing I like about Star Wars so much, Star Wars, even in good stories, like the Revenge of the Sith, the novelization, they talk about Anakin or Stover, Matthew Stover talks about Anakin and um, Obi-Wan in a melodramatic way, like as if you were seeing an opera about these characters. Not all throughout the story, but there is drama, operatic drama in Star Wars that I love and I think should be absolutely there for Star Wars, and it's not there for my fiction. And it doesn't need to be. And I've got melodramatic characters, so to speak, but they're not it's not Doctor Doom, you know. It's like, oh, it's not there's a lot of melodrama involving someone like Emperor Palpatine, and it's beautifully Star Wars. It's like distinctively Star Wars, and that's why I could say that my fiction, that the stories I'm working on are whether short stories or longer form. I treat them like little epics. Like the short stories are little epics involving a couple characters, or spaceships because spaceships are characters in my novels as well, or my short stories, um, or long form epics. They're meant to be epics. They're not meant to be melodramatic all the time like you would see in a space opera. And that's not to fault Star Wars. Star Wars needs to be melodramatic. I think that's why it makes it so distinct, so unique to the sci-fi experience because it's supposed to be like an opera. It's wonderful. I mean, even John Williams' score, like who did he learn from? He learned from Stravinsky and Wagner and Verdi and all of these classic, like Beethoven, all these classic Schumann, Schubert. Like that's what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Anyway, I gotta get back to the chat. I love talking about this stuff. All right. Let's see. Let's see. George Barrett is asking who wrote the novel where Palpatine commands Vader to Eriadu, and soon Tarkin earns his utmost respect. Why he released the cocky fleet officer on Tarkin's command, I don't know. I don't know who you're talking about or what book you're talking about. Sorry, George Barrett. Final Fantasy says Sound Engraver art comes off as preachy when people use art as a means to an end, when in reality art is supposed to be an end in and of itself. Yeah, and the preaching or the teaching follows. Like I don't think Sean Stewart with Yoda Dark Rendezvous, he's like, I gotta teach people this. Like, no, he taught it with good writing. And that's the beautiful thing is like it's when art speaks to you, it teaches you. Um there's there's like this, I don't want to call it a misconception, but there's this idea where artists who are making good art, very good art, and then making a profit off of it, they go to the postmodernists saying the postmodernists wanted meaning, like just meaning, no emotion, no expression. And maybe that's true, but I always got the sense that some of these art movements really wanted to strip meaning out of the art piece itself. So I could be mistaken. I don't know, but like art has meaning and teaching, but as a representation, like the art has to be good. The art has to be a good art piece, then everything follows. Everything follows. I gotta mention this. Brian Gilmartin says, he's talking to Crystal Ashes, but you say, man, that Hans Zimmer touch, I swear that man has forgotten the difference between a musical instrument and a murder weapon. Yeah. I don't want to say that of all of Zimmer's scores, but I tell you, like his best scores were his earlier scores. Like no, I'm fine with being experimental, but like people really think being experimental is just noise and soundscapes, and I love soundscapes, because my name is Sound Engraver. I love sound. But you gotta have a good musical narrative, and I think his earlier stuff is so much better. Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, Lion King, Lone Ranger, just all that. Filoni, George Barrett says, created Ahsoka together, and while still under Lucas's tutelage, it sure doesn't matter because the writing is horrible. Like it doesn't even matter where and how she and when how like where when and how she was generated. Um, it just like someone dropped the ball, especially the more people say, oh, like she was a horrible character at first and then she became this amazing character. It's like, no, you didn't pay attention to the writing. She gets away with murder, unwitting murder, but murder nonetheless. Like someone does the murder for her, but like, and I say murder, I mean blatant killing. She gets like 3 star cruisers destroyed because of her antics when she's very young, and then she releases Darth Maul so she can escape, and he brings the whole cruiser down, killing. She's like, I won't kill these clone troopers, and then she releases. Well, no, she says this after she releases Maul, and Maul destroys the ship. Everyone dies except Maul, Ahsoka, and then Rex or whatever. It's like they will not die by my hand. I'm like, they died by your hand. Maybe you didn't destroy the ship, but you let Maul go, and he destroyed the ship. It's a horrible character. Just ugh. Crystal Ashes says Ahsoka becoming irrelevant. It's almost as if people don't like having things shoved in their faces or something. Yeah, if Filoni backed off, if he used Ahsoka sparingly, she could have stayed relevant. You also say real Star Wars was about hope and optimism. Disney's nonsense is just nihilism. It's just about nihilism. Yeah, I agree. Eldridge Fan says Ventress was another interesting component of the novel. Oh, I loved Ventress in this novel. Oh, I thought she was so well written. I got to talk about Star Wars a little more next week because it's, people might, I get it. The argument is like, oh, it's all about the Sith or it's all about Dark Force users and Light Force users. That's boring. It's like, it's not boring if you know how to write, because Mace is very different from Kenobi, who's very different from Yoda, who's very different from Shakti, all these Force users who, use Force for the good. Then you've got Plagueis, who's very different from Palpatine, who's very different from Ventress, who's very different from Count Dooku, who's very different from Bane. It's like, yeah, I think as long as you know how to write a very very distinct story using a Dark Force user or a Light Force user or a Good Force user, it's like you could have like a plethora of EU novels that just focus on Force users. Confident that if you're a good writer and you know the character well, you can make a very distinct story. Luke Skywalker has a very different story from Mace Windu. And it's, yeah, that's the, how do you pronounce that name? Algernon? Yeah, flower for I might read that. Like I keep thinking I need to read that. Read that. But I'm a little nervous because it'd mess with me. There's a lot of sci-fi out there that just messes with you. Um, Crystal Asher says, "Well, there's optimism. If we just elevate women, the world will be perfect." Like the Sentinel, man, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time. Got a notification from YouTube. Thank you, Crystal Ashes. That's interesting. Well, good to see you. That is great to see you. Brian Gilmartin got a membership as well. Final Fantasy fan says Paul Atreides is a cautionary tale of corruption, much like Anakin, and we're still talking about we're still talking about Star Wars. Yeah. Paul Atreides, I think he wanted to do the right thing, but he let his premonition of things kind of overshadow him. And it was like, well, this is prophecy, so this is what we're gonna do. And unfortunately, I think by the second book, he just becomes a tragic character, like not an anti-hero, but just not a hero. And it's kind of sad. Like I would have written Dune differently, but that's just Dune, you know? Like who am I to say, oh, I would write it differently? No, it's famous for a reason, you know. And I don't dislike Dune. I think Dune is I've read the first novel twice, and I will read the whole series. I will not watch any of the movies. I will not watch any of the prequel shows. Like science fiction shows, I don't see any visual difference between the Foundation shows, which I will never watch, and then the prequel shows of Dune. It all looks the same to me. And especially with Asimov, man. Asimov needs to look so different. Like Asimov is really that Foundation trilogy is really good. As far as world building and political intrigue and stuff. And caricatures and the hyperbolic actually there's a lot of melodrama in Foundation. It's so unique. And then I hate to say this, but toward the end of Asimov's life, he really struggled with dying and old age, and it just really wrecked the two stories that sandwich the trilogy. It's just the trilogy. If you're interested in the trilogy, the Foundation trilogy is all you need. You don't need the sequels. It messes it up, and the prequels really, really do Harry Seldon a disservice. I don't like it at all. It's so horrible. Eldritch Fan says, yeah, Sentinel says Tolkien was a devout Catholic. Yep. Eldritch Fan says Dune is about how terrifying it is to be caught up in the wake of a truly heroic figure with a divine purpose, but the only thing worse would be the alternative. Yeah, and it's, yeah, like, I think there's a lot of truth in what you say. And yeah, C.S. Lewis, with his affiliation with Tolkien, was inspired to pursue Christianity. And then C.S. Lewis is now like the most prolific, most famous Christian writer of definitely the 20th century, but still the 22nd century. We're not in the 22nd century, 21st century. I thought you were gonna about to do the Tom Hardy Bane voice for the second there when you mentioned Doctor Doom. Yeah. Now that I know who Bane really is in the mythos of Batman, I don't think I would want to see the Nolan version of Bane again. Yeah. Bane is so frightening to me. He's a frightening people. Like I'm very empathetic and sympathetic, and when I see Batman go up against Bane, I feel for him so much. Mace Windu actually kind of went up against a Bane figure in his story with Carvaster, the villain of the story. This is why the Counter-Reformation is one of my favorite eras of art. I tell you, whatever people think about like Protestants versus Catholics and the like, it cannot be denied that like there was a pushback, like people needed to make beautiful art again. Yeah. All right, let's continue on down. There's also an original scripted film, Equilibrium, says George Barrett. Did I see that one? Oh yeah, Christian Bale. Yeah, yeah, I did see that movie. Yes. Similar to Logan's Run, not as bright of a light show and didn't do well, but it was part three. It's 3 per 4 stars for Ebert. Yeah, that movie Equilibrium. There was a like it's sci-fi and it's got a lot of 1984 in it, obviously with the like the big screen and the leader, and then I think at the end he's like this kind of, oh, don't shoot me or whatever, and then he's got his aide who was supposed to be your friend or at one point and then betrays you, and there's no heroics, there's no heroism in that movie for the particular reason is that he didn't save his lover. He let her burn, like, because he didn't get there in time or whatever. Maybe he was trying to get there. Maybe he was trying to get there, but she died. And I was like, ah, great. And then he comes to his senses. He's so full of emotion. Like, not comes to his senses. He comes to the truth of things. And then I think he stops the leader, and then he stops the aide. I remember seeing like he it's like, what was it, like gun kana or gun katana or whatever, where it's like use of guns and martial arts, which I actually think was kind of a cool idea. Um, it's very different. Um, but then I think like he slices with a sword the aide's face or whatever. And then like the guy turns, the actor turns, I'll never forget it. And then like his face comes off in half, and I was like, that looks absolutely fake. I don't think it was a bad movie. It's been years since I've seen it. It's just a part of that really grayscape sci-fi that you can have, but you need more colorful sci-fi too. Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, yeah, Private Eye. This is worth posting. Filoni, you put her against me, fans. You did that to yourself. Um, Filoni's what is what assassinated Ahsoka? You mean life? I don't know. Yeah. The Sentinel says, now that he's a member, or you might be she, I don't know. Luke's story is truly unique in that he disobeys what Obi-Wan and Vader want him to do. Luke becomes the first of the new Jedi Order when he refuses to kill his father. Yeah, like, it's good that Darth Vader is his father because it's that one bond. Because Yoda in the story is resolved in stopping Dooku. Then Dooku places him in a position where he basically has to let Dooku escape. That's not really a spoiler because we see Dooku later. He. And I love one thing I do love about the novelization of Revenge of the Sith is what Yoda learns with his failure after he battles and does not succeed. He battles Emperor Palpatine. He understands his ultimate mistake, and he understands, I need instruction. I've been wrong with my giving the same instruction over these ages of Jedi younglings, and I need to be taught. And then he gives himself completely. It's like, I am your student, Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's great, beautiful. He's like, I am your student. It's great. So he fails the physical battle, but he never fails the spiritual battle. He's always learning. There's a line where he says in the story, because Dooku's like, I'm not your apprentice anymore, and Yoda, and I appreciate this because I'm a teacher too. He's like, I am a teacher. I teach like drunkards drink. Do you think I would stop teaching? And it's so true. It's like he's always teaching. He's a teacher. I love it. Let's see. Let's see. Final Fantasy says, however, this is boring. Oh right. Piece of fiction can only be counted as high art uh, when it has standards. Let's see. What are you saying? When with the standards of a fool, basically you're saying, oh, morality, it's a fool's errand. Therefore, that's easier. I made this. I hope I made your point. Basically, you're thinking that the graying of morality. That's what makes things so interesting. The gray, the actual physical color of the grayscape, and then the morally gray characters, which makes you as a reader and as a viewer cerebrally gray. Like there's a little bit of retardation in constantly bombarding us with morally gray characters. And I made this point with RJ's recent video on a comment. And it wasn't really to his video and what he was saying, but more or less, it's like it is very hard to write unique, true virtuous characters who are heroes and unique villains that succumb to the vice. There is a saying that people say, like, okay, basically, it's like it's harder to do black and white than gray throughout. It's the second you blur the line between hero and villain, well, you're just cheating yourself because that's the easiest thing to write. It's very hard to make unique dichotomies between hero and villain. Um, I'm not against sympathetic villains per se, but we do need other, elemental villains. And we've been hearing, maybe you've heard this before from time to time from like film commentators or whatever, or YouTubers, and people like, oh, you got to write good villains, and you got to write villains who believe that they're the hero of their story. Now that is Prof and I were talking about that, and he made the point. That's one way to write a hero. That's one way to write a villain. Like you want to be the hero of your own journey or your own story. Maybe you have original altruistic ideas, but then the means you try to achieve that is questionable, but you think you're doing it for the greater good. I mean, to some extent, someone like Saruman had that with Lord of the Rings. But then Tolkien whittled him down to this really petty, bitter, resentful old curmudgeon of a man who gets literally stabbed in the back by his aide at the very end. He was a servant of the gods. His creation, he was a servant of the gods in the mythos of Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth. And then he's whittled down to being so petty. He believes he knows everything and he knows what's best, and then he uses that knowledge for the dark arts, and then he breeds a horrible type of orc called the Uruk-hai, and then he keeps going. He keeps destroying the trees around him. He keeps destroying life. He tries to eradicate the race of men, and it's like, oh, this is a new order. It's like to some point, maybe he had good ideas at first, and then it got to be horrible at the end. But like I don't think Saruman especially at the very end when he dominates the hobbits and he takes over Hobbiton and stuff. I don't think he thinks he's a hero in his story. My favorite villain might start with good ideas, good intentions, but my favorite villain really is doing evil and they know they're doing evil. Like it doesn't stop them from doing evil. And why is that so? Is because when we're in sin or when we pursue a vice or we do a crime or something, you're not thinking you're the hero in your story. You know you're doing something bad, and you keep doing it. Like when Christians, for instance, struggle with sin, it's like they know they're doing something bad. That's what the whole struggle is with the spiritual and the religious. And so my favorite villain is like, okay, I'm pursuing the forbidden fruit. I'm pursuing the dark knowledge, the dark arts. And I don't care anymore. I'm in it for the knowledge. I'm in it for the power. I'm in it for my vice. That's my favorite villain. Like maybe you want to approach like maybe they could start out trying to be the hero in their story and then they just keep falling and falling and falling. And when you're in that state of mind as a villain or as a bad guy, you know you're doing bad. Like, I think villains know they're doing bad in their story. And so they're not, I don't really care for the phrase, oh, he or she thinks they're the heroes of their own story. It's like, no. They know they're doing wrong. Yeah. Um, I think Eldridge Finn, maybe you make a point that Sith are fun, but they've been overused. I don't think so in the world of Star Wars because there's no Sith in other universes. Well, I mean, to an extent, every Sith has a different perspective. And I can talk about that maybe a little bit later, but like Visage Ventress, she has a different perspective than Darth Bane, for instance, or Darth Plagueis. Visage Ventress, I love the way she said it. She's like, at the end of the day, it's not good or bad. And I thought she was going to say it's about power. And she sort of does toward the end. But it's not, there's no good, there's no evil. I'm thinking, oh, she's going to say there's only power. Well, no, that's more Palpatine. She says there's life and then there's no life. You are either living or you're not. So you might as well make the best of your life and basically pursue selfish gain and doing horrible deeds to people. It's like, because it's about living. It's not about good versus evil. It's just about feeling life that day, life that moment. And, she's mistaken, obviously there is good versus evil, but she had a really interesting perspective that was very unique to her. I need to, guys, I'll be right back. I want to continue reading, but I have to use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Eldritch Fan, for the super chat. Yoda is 800 years old, greater than, or less than Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon is now eternal. Yeah, Qui-Gon had it right. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't catch you before you left, Eldritch Fan. Thank you for the super chat. I think it looks like you're heading out, and I'll probably wrap it up in a few minutes. I just I had to just leave for a second. Yeah, actually, you are right. Carvaster is another great non-Sith villain. Yeah, he's a great villain. He's still very powerful. And he's working with the relationship of that kind of manipulation of the Force in the Force-sensitive jungle. But you're right, he's not a Sith. Yeah. Do 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 do. Sentinel says the Bruce Wayne trilogy Batman is a messianic figure who Bruce uses to alleviate his guilt and move past his trauma. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you is that a novel or just comics? Um, but it's great. Like I mean, like Yoda being a Dark Force user is kind of the same where we see with Superman using his godlike powers to control people, or Batman to be this brutalistic vigilante. It's like, why do people want? The truth is, you got to ask why people want that. Why do people want these good characters, whether real people in our real people inside those worlds, inside those universes, saying, why can't you do this? Why, like, this is how I do it. And then Superman and Batman and Yoda, they all have to instruct these people. And that's annoying. That's so. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Because it looked like my computer. Okay, good. You guys can hear me. Okay, I know I froze. I even saw that. But my computer's saying, "Hey, we found your interface." I'm like, did my interface disconnect? All right, cool, awesome. One second, I'm still here, just grabbing some water. So, um, so why do people have such a hard time with good characters, like genuine light side, like good characters, aspirational heroes? It's because, I mean, there's a lot to it, but I think people really just want people to be whittled down to base things like, oh, you're no better than me. Like, I don't have to aspire to be as good as you. Um, and then I think if you make the person even worse than you, like, oh, they're worse than me, then again, like, you don't have any accountability. Whereas with Yoda, with Dark Rendezvous, he's the candle, he's the starlight. As long as he lives, he's a constant reminder. He's a constant spiritual foil to people practicing bad things in the dark side. And I love, I'm glad I remembered this. One of the best things that I love about his character in this story, very much mirroring that scene in Dagobah where he says, "Do or do not, there is no try." He tells the boy Padawan, he says, "Listen, don't dwell on possibly succumbing to the dark force." In so many words, he says this: "You are with the dark side or you're not, but you choose." I love that. Like, you are virtuous or you're not. You choose. Don't dwell in, like, oh, maybe I'm going to sin, or maybe I'm going to be a dark force user. Maybe the dark force or dark side of the force is taking over me and I can't help it. Maybe I was never a good person. And the girl Padawan, she tells him, like, sometimes you've got to pretend to be good. Like, maybe you don't think you're good, and he's like, well, what's the even point? Have I been pretending to be good? And then she says, that's sometimes what all we can do. And what that means is, even if you think you're a bad person, even if you're like, I'm not a good person, but you want to be a good person, you've got to pretend to be a good person, because pretending will have you act in a good way. And then once good and virtue becomes a habit, then you are a good person. And so sometimes pretending is just enough to get you going. And Yoda brings it to the young Padawans. It says, you choose. You tell me whether you are dark side or not, but you have to choose. You can't waddle in it. And actually, that's a really strong message for Christians who waddle in sin. They're like, oh, well, I know God is merciful. His mercies are new every morning. That's why they use that verse all the time. That's why some Christians will use that verse all the time. It's like, well, I can do this really dark, devious thing tonight, and then in the morning, God's mercies will be new every morning. It's like, that's not what that verse means. That's not what it means. And I love Yoda. He's just sticking it to even the young Padawans. Like, you are or you're not. You don't wallow in it. You're not about to be. You are or you're not. And I love that. I love that so much. So anyway, I gotta go back and see some of these comments. Oh, Leia Plus Size is here. Good to see you. I always think Return of the Jedi is underrated. Luke redeeming his father is such a heroic moment. That's why it sticks. That's why it's almost 50 years old now, as far as the story. and it has stuck with us. And it ought to, you know. It ought to continue and continue and continue. Can you imagine if the original Star Wars films were filmed today? Like Luke would say, "Screw it, I don't need my father. I never had a father. You were never around for me." That would be the message. Like you were never there for me. Why should I? He he never met his father. He just had this idealized version of his father, who he was, like a space navigator among the stars, and then he realizes he's this mass murderer serving the empire and the emperor, and it's like you know what? I think there's still good in him. And people would laugh at that notion if that was made today. Like, you are stupid for writing that. It's like, why then does it speak to us? Why does it speak to us? Now, the thing is, it was written perfectly because Darth Vader could not survive. It would not be a good thing for Darth Vader to live. Obviously, he would have to face the consequences, but death was perfect for him after he was redeemed. Like, he needed to die. He couldn't, it wouldn't make sense in the writing to keep him around. um, but he was reconciled with his son. He was reconciled with the Force. But people would think that's just too stupid. Why? Because they don't actually believe a character can be so good-hearted. Because they it's like, well, he's a mass murderer and he commits all these atrocities. It's like, well, that's true. But I gotta see if there is good in you, then okay. And then, the thing is, like, Luke at the very end was planning on going down with that space station. There was that plan of, oh, we gotta blow up this space station that has the Emperor in it. This is our last and final time. Like, this is the final, this is it. And Luke's on that station. Like, I think he's perfectly at peace that well, he even says in the line, like, you're going down. The space station is coming down. You're going down with me. He says that to the Emperor. So even he's just trying to redeem his father, not in as a life, like to save his life. He's trying to save his soul before death. And it's that to me is not stupid. That to me is a really awesome thing. Gosh, it's almost like 2 hours talking because I love Star Wars so much. Oh my goodness. Let's continue on down. I'm gonna probably skip a few people. Asajj, yeah, maybe Asajj Ventress is like the Catwoman of Star Wars. She's the anti-hero at the end of the Star Wars obsession. I feel like Catwoman is a little bit more redeemable. But then again, I really don't know Ventress's history apart from like the Clone Wars series and then her introduction here. I actually really need to I need to look at the 2D animation. I really do. Grievous for the novelization was perfect. I'll talk about the novelization on a separate video. Maybe not even on a stream. There's a lot of good things. A lot of good things. Yep, Crystal Ashes is right. Easier to drag others down to your level rather than trying to better yourself. All right. Yeah. Play Knights of the Old Republic you shall. Choose light or dark side you must. The nice thing about video game Star Wars is you can start over just in case you make a mistake. No! Dark side points. Prof is great. He never wants a single dark side point. Which, for video games, like video games are not like real life where you can start over. Or spam save like I do on Nintendo Switch. Ah, you got a timed game, you got a timed obstacle, no fear. Just get a little bit better. Then spam save it. I told my prof I'm not worth my generation. And as a 90s kid, I didn't have that option of spam saving. Yep. Oh, I think that's I think I made it to the end. Oh, hey Ace, good to see you. Ace actually makes the point, and mine ended there too. Vader had to die like Jean Grey for her actions as Phoenix until later, her resurrection. resurrected. Yeah, like I mean, I think Vader can be more um just like a Force ghost, or not Vader, but Anakin. Yeah, I could. Crystal Ashes says, I wish I could spam undo in real life, like when I draw. Yeah, save scumming. Save scumming. Is that what it's called? Yeah, I'm not proud of it. All right. I guess let's end it there. That's wrapping up 2 hours here. That was really fun. That I feel like I could say way more, but we have other streams for that. So maybe I think since I'm in the middle of it and kind of thinking about it, I might just talk more Star Wars into the week. Maybe I'll do a separate video. I don't know. I've been really working on my science fiction and my music making and my super collider. So my creative time is really for making music, trying to release more music, and then trying to get better at super collider and publish stories. But it's really important. So if I don't make a separate video, I'll just maybe talk about the novelization. How about that? How about talking about the novelization of Revenge of the Sith? Because there are points I really want to talk about that I think are really worth it. But at the same time, there's things that are just my own opinion about it as well. So good stuff, good stuff. So maybe more Star Wars next stream next Sunday. And I think I'll end it there until I see you guys all keep producing, preserving, and promoting that good art you love. And I will catch you later. Thank you.